Welcome to a series where we're going through the prophecy of Daniel verse by verse to get an understanding of the depths of God's heart and how His plan works. His plan in the Bible, from the very beginning of the Bible to the very end, is about the coming of His kingdom. And what He shows Daniel is no different than what He is showing us today. So by understanding Daniel, we can truly understand the past, present, and future of God's plan. And where we are is we're at a peculiar place where we spent a lot of time talking about the besiegement, and what Jeremiah said and Isaiah said about this besiegement is that those led off into captivity will be blessed. They will be blessed. God's hand will be with them. Those who are kind of left behind in Jerusalem after the besiegement, His hand isn't with them, which puts them in danger. Bandits, raids, pillaging, death, famine, all of that. It's not pretty for those still in Jerusalem and Judea and Israel. And it's those being led off into captivity to Babylon are being blessed. Now, many of them are going the ways of the Babylonians. And what we see with Daniel is they purpose themselves, Daniel and his friends purpose themselves to not defile themselves before God. And they have put God first in everything. So as a result, we're already seeing that blessing on them. And there's a very significant blessing that we saw in the last episode. Very, very significant. So we're just going to pick it up in Daniel 1, starting in verse 17. As for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. It's a very significant gift that God has given them. Now, He just doesn't give that to anybody. One thing I will say, that biblically speaking, when you ask for wisdom, God says yes. If you ask for wisdom, God will tell you yes, and He will give you wisdom into His insight and His plan. Now, the problem with that often with many people is they don't like to see the wisdom of God because it conflicts with what they want or what they see in the world. So be careful what you ask for. But I highly recommend you ask God for wisdom because He says yes to it. Now, this thing about the dreams, this is a very significant piece. So what God has given him is they've given him understanding, wisdom, and Daniel the ability to interpret dreams. And so let's just keep going here. Now, at the end of the days, when the king had said that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. Then the king interviewed them. Among them all, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. Thus Daniel continued until the first year of King Cyrus. So ultimately, they're now the smartest guys in all the realm. Now let's keep in mind where they're at. They're in Babylon. It has been, the civilization of Babylon is one of the very first civilizations on the planet. So in their minds of astrology and wisdom, they're advanced more than anybody else on the planet. So for these 4 men to show up and have more wisdom than them, or than the Chaldeans or the Babylonians, is very, very significant because it had put them in a place of power. Now they serve before the king. The king is lending his ear to them. If they want to say something, or they have, they want to give the king counsel, they are in a very significant, powerful role all of a sudden, simply because of what God blessed them with. Nothing they did as children, nothing they did as young men, but what God has blessed them with because they purposed themselves not to defile themselves. Now, this piece on the dreams, this is very important because God communicates to us through our dreams. And you have to see that. So many people have reached out and said, I had this dream, and they share this dream. And I love reading that because it's in my mind, you're getting insight into what God is doing. He is showing you something through these dreams. And the closer we get to Jesus' second coming, the more we're going to see this take place. If we go to Joel, it's a very significant prophecy of Joel on the end times. In Joel 2:28, it says, And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also on my menservant and on my maidservant I will pour out my Spirit in those days. So what God's saying is this concept of understanding dreams is very important into understanding what God's plan is for your life and for the coming of His kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. It's very important. And the fact that He has given Daniel this piece is significant. And if you're having dreams and you're given the interpretation of those dreams, pay attention to them. If we continue with Daniel, this is going to play a huge role in the continued blessing of Daniel. And the enemy will actually oftentimes use these to try to block God's plan as well. So I'm going to jump into chapter 2 now, kind of keeping that in the back of your head, that this is significant. Seeing dreams and interpreting dreams is very significant because that's how God talks to us oftentimes. We'll pick it up in chapter 2, verse 1. Now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I've had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. But the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, and the interpretation should be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made into a heap. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. Now, obviously, the Chaldeans and the Babylonians, sorcerers and magicians and astrologers, are not going to be able to do this because this is a gift from God. And it's very, what we're about to see, this interpretation, God gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream that literally laid out the plan of his coming kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Literally laid it out in a dream, and it is only Daniel that is able to interpret that. When I said this book from beginning to end is about the coming of the kingdom of heaven, he shows it to Nebuchadnezzar, but it is only Daniel that can interpret it and reveal what that thing even was. So this piece is important. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about how this is working and how God shows him this dream before we even get into interpreting the dream. Because it's obviously, as we see here as well, is that it's going to bless the heck out of Daniel and his friends, just like Jeremiah and Isaiah said it would. So, love to hear your thoughts on all this. Put it in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support this channel, the Patreon, that link is also below. But the most important part of this channel, we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, I love guns.